And we are recording Colonel Mike Bennett, who came on here, a week ago, 2 weeks ago,
Yeah, a little over, yeah.
to discuss Brine of War, which is a sick book. Again, because I'm a child and have the attention span of a grasshopper, I only read books through not reading, listening. And if it's not on Audible, I'll make sure that the author has it on Kindle, because what you can do is you can get your phone to read it to you. It's not as good. It's in that shitty robot voice, but you can modulate it up to like 2x speed. Brine of War. I'm an audiobook connoisseur. I don't know if that's good or bad. I've listened to 64 nonfiction audiobooks in the last 13 months. Brine of War is put it on 2x speed. That's going to run me about 90 minutes, 2 hours. And When Towers Fall is, I want to say, a little under that, maybe like an hour 30. So for anybody listening, they're very, very short books, and but it's not short in a sense that you're cutting corners or that they're not fleshed out. They're condensed in the sense that there's no bullshit. There's no, and then I was walking on a long, dusty road and I thought to myself, no, it's just XYZ happened. Pay attention. But because nobody's here to listen to my dumbass, they're here to listen to you. Colonel Bennett, please introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, just Mike.
Mike. Of
Yeah, I'm Mike Bennett. This is my second time on the show. Thank you very much.
course.
Um, I think I said the last time, I spent several years in the military, got out, retired, um, and did, other kind of work over the course of many years, but fully retired now. And I always wanted to write, specifically fiction. Even when I was in the military, of course you do a lot of writing. You do a lot of crap writing. You staff papers, and it's very dry. And so yeah, I wrote a lot, but nothing of any. It certainly wouldn't be very entertaining to read. So I wanted to write, and that's what I do now in my retirement, between chilling out and riding my bike and kayak and just doing recreational kind of things. But I'm very honored to be on the show and that you have actually read the books, which is really cool.
Of course.
So if you had any questions, I'm more than capable to answer.
What kind of dirty communist would I be if I didn't read I will never. If I have on a guest for a book, it is a personal point of pride that I finish the book.
Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, not everyone will do that, and it's pretty apparent when you're being interviewed. That they haven't read the book. Like, okay.
I think it was one. And for all future listeners, today's Monday, September 12th, 2022 at 2:22 p.m. Eastern time. I think once in 900. This is episode 908. I think one time, I don't remember if it was 2020 or 2021, I like kind of breezed through a book, but I had kept rescheduling the guest, that at this point I felt bad and I justified it in my mind that I could have them on. And to me, it was so apparent that I hadn't read the entire thing. And it was so clear that he knew, and he was being very kind, and I was bullshitting my way through it. And when we finished, I stopped recording and I just poured my guts out. I was like, I was doing this. Like, I just moved into my apartment. I was like, can we reschedule for tomorrow? And like, I put everything down and just burned through 9 hours and finished that book. And that was the only time I'd done it. And it felt so gross. It felt so fake. I felt like a prostitute telling someone I was actually in love with them. And I was like, I'm not a dirty whore.
Well, I'm not going to go, that's a little far, but it is nice when someone's read the book, and then, I try to write with some kind of clarity, but there could be points, and I've been criticized for using too many acronyms, that sort of thing, which I do add a glossary in the third book. I've heard it enough where stuff that rolls off the tongue for me, and of course I know what J3 solid means, or whatever. I shouldn't. I mean, and maybe I got lazy at some point where I didn't spell it out or what have you. But it's nice to have someone have read the book, and then they might have very specific points and say, well, what were you thinking about? Why'd you do X? And then I have to stammer and kind of go, what the fuck was I thinking when I wrote that? I don't know. Wait a minute.
Well, again, that's kind of the reason why I like your book is it's not dumbed down like a super secretive guy in a black ninja suit. No, it's I get to kind of geek out on it because I've interviewed these guys before. But when it's like a wave to USAP or a CIA sad saw ground branch, like that's fun. And it's sort of like an initiation. Like you gotta learn it. You gotta learn what it is. It's Raven Rock by Garrett Graff, which is all about continuity of government,
Yeah.
continuity of operations, enduring constitutional government, Raven Rock, NORAD, Mount Weather,
Whether Mount Weather.
Greenbrier. It's one of my favorite books. I've had him on here before, but he actually starts the book with in like the first chapter or second with just like a 4 paragraph thing that's entirely acronyms. It's like a boob attack on CONUS at DEF CON 2 and he goes through it all and then goes to explain what they all are. And he's like, you have to understand, he's like, it's written like this because this is how it's referred to in real life. And if you want authenticity, it's not OMG, a bunch of missiles are coming. No, it's a bolt out of the blue attack on the continental United States at Defense Condition 1. So I like it. But to kind of and you mentioned it in Brine of War, and it doesn't necessarily it's not unique to the story, but it's something I've always been interested in is classification levels. And there's only I mean, even the classification levels are often classified. There's only so much you can learn. But for the listeners, could you maybe explain and a little bit for myself? I'd be lying if I said it wasn't awesome for me. Um, within special access programs, which I believe are the highest tier, right? That's the F-117 Nighthawk was a special access program, and I know the
So as far as classifications officially, there's technically only three.
yeah,
There's confidential, which is pretty low tier stuff. Then there's secret,
mm-hmm.
and then there's top secret. So those are your three classifications.
And
Then you start
TSSCI.
having all kinds of weird bolt-on stuff that really does mean a lot different. So technically, I have been read on to programs that were classified secret, again, middle of the road secret, but those were special access programs, something, something. So the classification has to do with how grave it is to national security if that is revealed. The gravity, very grave. The severity. But they're kind of guidelines, and it's almost to the point we've overclassified things so much that if it's not above secret, I mean it's common knowledge, uh, supposedly. But there will be little different ways around, quote, the classification, because you can have a TS clearance, which is a little more rigorous than a secret level clearance. So they do interviews and they find out who you are. Are you a molester? Whatever. How trustworthy are you? So you can have TS as a clearance level. But that really doesn't mean that, of course, there's this whole thing called need to know.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, you're not supposed to let someone know XYZ unless they have a need to know that specific whatever it is. So that's another way, and to kind of delineate the extent between several things. You might have, and it is a compartment if you're read on to talent keyhole or gamma. And there's a whole bunch of these different flavors, and like TK, talent keyhole, that might be just for imagery type stuff. Way back when.
That was satellite programs, right?
Yeah, way back when. That was the shit. That was.
Oh, NRO. Oh yeah.
I mean, that was
Corona, keyhole, hexagon.
just the whole idea that there were satellites up
Yeah.
there
Oh yeah.
peering down with clarity, taking pictures. That was a very big deal. Well, now you have Google Maps and what have you, right? Commercial entities that have imaging capabilities, and that could extend to mapping type stuff like infrared, right? So anyway, I mean, you've got all these clearances. You get the 3 clearances, and then you have all these little caveats that you're only going to get read onto just because of a specific need to know that particular thing. So the idea is to compartment who knows what. The idea is to control who knows what, who has access to what. And of course, then if something's compromised, they kind of have at least a starting point to say, okay, who's the dirtbag that let this out? That's kind of the point. So then you're going to have special access programs, SAP. And another thing that's kind of interesting is like CIA will have its whatever kind of super duper stuff. And then NRO, as you mentioned, has its little super duper thing managed. I forget what it's called. Come to me eventually. And then the Army has, so everyone has their little thing. So you're in the clubhouse. You're a cool guy.
Yeah.
If you have that little stripe on your badge or whatever. And sometimes that's there's a lot of people involved with programs that have absolutely nothing to do with them at all, but because of their rank or their position in the government or whatever, they get all these accesses. But the general idea is all this stuff is meant to control who has access to certain kind of information, not just everyone.
It's in theory, it's what the Titanic was supposed to be, right? It had multiple compartments in the hull.
Yeah, I mean, that's a physical analogy of yes, exactly.
Yeah, it was so if you get struck by something,
Right.
it'll fill up. You close the bulkhead doors, even if there are guys inside, which did happen on the Titanic, and then you contain it.
Right.
Newer skyscrapers you can't see it because it's a nice, beautiful facade of glass and steel,
Yep.
but it will actually kind of be like checkered with like concrete barriers, maybe every 10 floors. So if it catches on fire, like those 10 floors could catastrophically collapse and burn out, but the rest of the building will be fine. And as opposed to having an iceberg situation where you streak across the entire side and then the whole thing is fucked. It's knowing where it came from.
It's a perfect analogy. I mean, that's all it is.
Yeah.
And some of it is I guess meant to sound really sexy.
Sure. Of course.
It sounds really cool. And that's only because you're either in the exclusive club or you're not.
You're looking in, yeah.
And then people have penis envy when they're not in that club.
Well, there's also, I mean, one, it's to find out who leaked it, right? It's like a die pack from a bank, who, but it's also to, even if it catastrophically fails, okay, maybe there was a mole, but they only learned about the stealth covering of the missile bay. They didn't learn the avionics or where the radar absorbing material is produced. You can
you'll see that throughout the series.
Yeah.
There are several operations, and you'll read all the books, and some people have come to the conclusion correctly that there are, so each book, When Towers Fall, that's kind of about Quince, right? The Operation Quince. And then you'll get to the third book, and the operation is Quagmire. And then, in the book you read, Brine of War, the sixth book, the operation is, there are two, but the big one really is Quahog, all with the letter Q, right?
Yeah, Q clearance.
But what you'll realize is several of these operations, even as intense and as they're big things, they're big operations. There's pieces of them going on at the same time, and you don't really realize that if you're not paying attention. Until you read through all the books, and you're like, wait a minute, this timeline that's going on here. Well, there's something going on in this time slot, this space of time also. It's not to be confusing. That's the compartmentation you're talking about. So there might be a character, say Jack, he's involved with doing something in 2007. Well, in another book, you get to that period of time, 2007, and you're noticing, Mojo's doing a whole bunch of stuff. You get to the other book, there is no Mojo in that book. Well, that's because he's doing stuff, in that period of time. But that is exactly part of the reason, these guys don't know these other operations until they get read on
Yeah.
into them, and they start participating in some fashion. And you're right, they're some of the activities are very modular. So you just give, this guy, and he's going to do the cyber attack piece. And that's really all he's going to do. And that's all he's going to know about.
Yeah.
He's not going to know some of the kinetic action stuff that's going on elsewhere.
I mean, like we all know the Manhattan Project and how secretive it was. But what's interesting about Campbell, it was called Campbell because of soup because of super because of super bomb, the H bomb project in late 40s, early 50s. Not only was it so secret, but the vast majority of the people working on it didn't even know they were working on it.
Right.
Like they were because it consumed, I think, 10% of
Called
the nation's
unwitting.
electricity. Like they didn't know what it was, but they were just operating these things.
Yeah.
And I mean,
That's referred to as unwitting. So they might be contributing to something they have no
yeah.
idea. They're just, doing their thing.
But what's brilliant about that though, it's not even that they're working on something and they're not read in. They didn't know they were, yeah, like you said, unwitting. They didn't even, Tommy, what are you working on? I don't know. I'm not read in. No, it's Tommy. What are you working on? What do you mean? What am I working on? I work at a turbine plant.
Right.
Like, I think that's so cool. Harry Truman didn't know what the A bomb was until I think 13 days into his presidency when General Groves told him. Like, that's insane. He was the vice president and didn't
Yeah.
know what the Manhattan Project was.
I don't know if we can get away with doing that anymore these days.
Absolutely
I
not.
mentioned earlier, I mean, you'll have people that are read on to stuff that have absolutely no bearing
Yeah.
whether it succeeds, but because they're general, such and such,
Yeah.
they're going to be read on.
Yeah. Bunch of egos, bunch of ass kissing.
Yeah. So I mean, to do what you just said, man, these days, boy, I'd be surprised. Except when it comes to the Warlock. The Warlock
The war.
does these things.
Yeah. I was gonna say because in Raven Rock, Harry Truman talks about how he was in charge of, like, I guess, like the waste, fraud, and abuse committee during World War II as VP or as a senator or whatever he was, congressman, to make sure that nobody was like double dipping because the war
Yeah.
effort was so massive. It was you could get away with it.
Yeah.
And one of the things he did is he was chasing down, like, he was just looking at all these, I guess, like the flow of money, the cash trail. And he was like, so much money is going into like this place in Tennessee. It was
Right.
Oak Ridge. And I think it was General Groves came up to him and was like, "Hey, you're doing a great job. Like you tracked it down. You tracked it down." He goes, "Turn away from this one. This is not fraud, waste, and abuse." And Harry was like, "Got it," and
Right.
turned away.
Nudge, 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 wink, wink.
Yeah. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. I'll shoot you in the face, kind of thing. I don't. Yeah, I think you're right. I don't know if you could get away with it today unless you scaled it up proportion. And we'll get to the book. I know we're going down a rabbit hole right now, but unless you scaled it up proportionally, you would, I guess, just have to make levels within levels within. I mean, Annie Jacobson talks about. So I've interviewed Dale
Yeah.
Graff. He was the head of the Stargate project for the CIA, the remote viewing.
Yeah.
And Annie Jacobson talks about it in her book Phenomena, how they had it was like firewood, and inside of that was like purple owl, and inside of that was some, but it was special access programs within special access programs within special access programs. But it's because it's as you get to the 70s, 80s, 90s, and now present day, the the leaking ability of an individual is exponential. You're no longer Klaus Fuchs or the Rosenbergs. You can be Ed Snowden. You can tweet it,
Right.
and the damage is done. So I would
Right.
imagine the only way to stay up, to be like a near peer competitor to the ability of individuals to leak. And like right now, if I got a file and I leaked it, I have 12,000 subscribers. I mean, I'd get killed, but I could still get it out there. I would imagine it's just become so granular. I mean, I know the NSA has ESI, extremely sensitive
Yes.
information. I know
That's
Henry Kissinger made up his own called Furtherance, and that's when they were concocting the whole madman theory of Nixon to make the Soviets think that Nixon was going to use the H bomb in Vietnam. Yeah, I think you would just You would have to get it, so it wouldn't be anything new. It wouldn't be anything fundamentally new. It would just be an extrapolation of levels within levels within levels. That I feel like that's really the only way you could get it done today. Yeah.
It wouldn't this, something is happening just culturally where
That too.
that's a lot of it.
Yeah.
So you struggled through the book
I didn't
and some of these
struggle.
things
Hey, don't no, no, no. It's a great book. What do you mean struggled through it? Loved it. Don't throw that shade at yourself. I won't have it.
self-deprecation.
I won't have it
Um,
here.
um, but I mean, so you have a different background where you've at least read or spoken to a whole lot of people, and then some readers do not. So part of the madness, I guess, of the series is and you haven't done the first one because I told you not to, but they keep ramping up some of this tradecraft type stuff. So you get a little smarter book after book after book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even then it's saturation. I mean, there's just, a shitload of stuff that goes on, but hopefully part of the idea is that you become a little more uh, knowledgeable of that world, and yes, you'll see some of the examples of compartmentation. Like the Brine of War is a good example because you read it, specifically the Lansing guy who's the little bureaucrat dude. He gets read on to a thing called juggler, and juggler is nothing. It's absolutely nothing. They're just throwing him a bone to keep him out of the way. So there's this whole, and it does kind of help into the big picture operation, but it's so low tier that it's almost irrelevant. So they throw him a bone, and it's juggler. So he's in on the juggler thing. But juggler is a compartment that's contained within the larger cohog, right? So I mean, there's an example of what you're saying, and that is, to have little pieces nestled within the broader thing, a portfolio. And that's what I was saying earlier. Technically speaking, when you look at the events that are all kind of happening the same, when you look across the whole series, all these events are kind of happening in the same period of time. That's why it's the Zephyr campaign, of which Quince is an element, Quagmire is another element, separated by a little bit of time, but pretty much concurrent, etc. So that does happen when you're planning these things, and they're very modular or discrete, so there isn't bleed over into other operations and that sort of thing. It's done just to contain, and it can be very complicated to read and go, I don't know what the fuck's going on here.
Yeah.
But you bear that kind of stuff in mind. You go, okay, it makes sense. It's just the deluge of when you're reading it's all this. It's a foreign language. You're learning a foreign language.
It's kind of an effective simulation though. Like what was I looking for? Like I hadn't watched until like a month ago, actually, the movie about 9/11 with Nick Cage. It's all right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually kind of fascinating to go through it because you see it from just his perspective. He doesn't see the first plane hit. They just hear boom.
Right.
They're in the first tower, and some guys are talking about the second tower on fire, and the guys are going, no, it's the north tower, it's not the south tower, because they're inside the building.
Right.
They never heard the explosion, and then so they don't know what's going on. They didn't even know it was that a plane had hit the second, and then like everything starts rumbling, and they didn't know what happened. It was the other tower collapsing, and then they're stuck under, and like an hour later or like 30 minutes later, another rumbling happens. They don't know it's the second tower coming down, and then like a couple hours later, there's another rumbling, and it's Tower 7, but none of them know. And it's you have to remember that looking back at it, people have now we look back and we have this complete view, right? We look, that's the problem with history is you kind of have these inaccurate mosaics because of where we are in time. It's we put embargoes on Japan and then they bombed Pearl Harbor and then we allied with, and it's all neat and it's over. We didn't know that at the time, right? If you
Right.
ever go back and listen to like a radio address, the evening of June 6, 1944, it puts you in like the mindset of like you're a kid in a living room in America and you're like, what happened? Like we did a huge thing. Overlord? What the hell is Overlord? Did we win? No, we
So
didn't win, but it was a big step.
you put it. I mean, everything's hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
It's easy. Um, so say 9/11, and that's when towers fall.
Yeah.
That's the name. That's I'm obviously, to me, obviously alluding to
Yeah.
that event. Um, but I was just watching a YouTube thing, and and now 21 years later,
Hmm.
people are, oh, remember this, uh, this guy was propaganda, it's conspiracy. Well, in the point of time when it happened, he may not have been doing it on purpose. And what I'm talking about is he was a reporter on the ground at the Pentagon, at the ground zero of the Pentagon. And just imagine being a reporter.
Yeah.
You're obviously not right there in the fire. They've got a cordon, half a mile away so you don't incinerate, and he's observing whatever. Well, his observation was innocent enough. He said, well, a plane went in here or something, but I don't see any of the plane. There's no chunks of the fuselage. And he, as reporters are wont to do, he's dramatizing this kind of thing
Wants a scoop.
live,
Yeah.
and making it sound like, this, it probably wasn't a plane. This was done in some other nefarious, something, so that viewers would sit there and go, wait a minute,
Yeah.
the government's telling me that an airplane, blah, blah. Um, but I think he was innocent enough. Okay, oh, yes, you did not see you did not see the tail section. You didn't see the wing. Okay, well, is it possible that the aircraft was flying at so many feet per second and it penetrated into the building? And yes,
Like
of
the World
course,
Trade Center.
that's possible. And there was no, yes, you're reporting the truth. You do not see large bits of aircraft. Yes, but the conclusion you should not make from that is whatever reporting is erroneous, and this is obviously, some kind of cover up, yada yada yada. So I think, you know fairly, and it's not. I mean, it's 21 years ago at this point, and we say never forget, but people have.
Hmm.
And now we're going to start having people probably very successfully rewriting history, unfortunately, as to what actually did happen, even though there's videotape of it. And you can extrapolate that to many, many things that are going on today.
Yeah.
But
It's
uh, I needed kind of a starting point to begin this warlock kind of dude. Um, and so the first book, you get a whole lot of buildup about a gentleman named John Prescott. Don't spoil it for everyone, but um, anyway,
I didn't say anything. Don't
I
throw this.
know.
Don't throw this.
I
Don't throw
saw
this
you
on
grin.
me.
I saw
I've
you
been a
grinning. I
I've
saw
been
you
a
grinning.
I've been a good boy. I've done nothing. I've fucking have
Yeah.
my I'll get my lawyer. I don't have a lawyer, but I'll have a lawyer present. I did
So
nothing.
um, when I went into the second one, I had my whole idea. Okay, what am I going to do? Um, and I'll be quite honest with you. I It was 2007, 2008, 2009. I became aware of Nord Stream,
Okay.
and just because I'm slightly malevolent thinker, I said to myself, who's supplying the oil? To where? I said, is that in the U.S. best interest? In 2008. And I very foolishly voiced my opinion to people seniors to me, and I was told, go, go
Go fuck
sit in the,
yourself.
go sit in the corner
Oh,
and color with crayon. Um, and no one wanted to listen to what I thought was something to think about. But you know, I did go back to 9/11 purposefully because I think it's just a significant event, you know, and all these things kind of add up to here's a character, you know, Jack, and he does this stuff, and then there's this guy Dennis, and then this guy Coco, you know, there's little building blocks, so there's a lot of character development, but I, you know, I back it up in time, and sometimes I relate a person like Jack is from book one, or Xander is from book one. So, and that time frame was like 2002, right? So as time goes along a little bit, you know, and these people end up being kind of the central cast cadre across the whole series. You know, well, why? Why these guys? Why these people? Coco's a woman. Why these persons? Well, they have a backstory. So I kind of fill in that. But and when I'm choosing, you know, as an author, as a writer, what kind of things do I want to highlight? So your boogeyman in When Towers Fall turns out to be the the uh, the architect of the Beirut bombing of 1983. So I'm throwing in historical references of stuff of significance to the United States and what we did or what we did not do. Uh, and eventually we get justice on that particular individual. But I do go back to 9/11 because that really is, for most people that are alive, really at this point, that would have interest, I think, in reading these books. They do remember, and that is something of such great significance that it deserves some kind of mention in the context of why is there a warlock and why is this necessary, so folks that read through these things, I mean, some of the stuff is quite a bit is done very, very deliberately because I think there are particular events in time that were opportunities that we certainly didn't take advantage of. The Arab Spring is an example, but so there's ways to rectify that through fiction that's both entertaining, but what if, coulda, woulda, shoulda type stuff.
The whole, I guess, the idea of fog of war that I brought up about like not knowing what's going on gets us kind of interesting because you could look at, I started this podcast December 12th, 2019, which in hindsight, we now know is the first time that a COVID infected individual came to the US. So you can actually kind of see the fog of war in real time. I've done an episode almost every day, and you can see it as like this like distant conversation, this idea in the background. And then you can, as episodes go, the first episode I did, we were just talking about the protests in Hong Kong. And so it's kind of poetic. You can go through them all, and I don't recommend it. It's 908 episodes. You go through it all, and you can see it coming as just like, yeah, I heard this was happening, to this is coming, to there's one episode where I'm like, dude, I'm talking to this guest, and I'm like, I was supposed to have on this guy from California, but he bailed on me. He said COVID's coming to the United States and they're going to shut down California. And you can see the guest looking at me like, the fuck? And I'm like, yeah, it's retarded. And then like a month later, it's like, well, the West Coast is shut down. And then you can see it coming. And then like I start interviewing doctors, and it's, we're trying to get to the bottom of it. And then you can see like, maybe this is just hysteria, and then like questioning it, and then censorship, and like, oh, now this is a money grab. But you can see it in real time. And now we can look back at it and go, well, this is the timeline of COVID. But you can go back just 2 years and actually see, I mean, from my perspective, and that's a limited data point, but you can see an example of the fog of war. And that's what I like about your books is, to the average normie like me, who doesn't know all these acronyms, who doesn't know that these are all going on, it's kind of that bombarding fog of war where you can look back and go, oh, I see how the books connect now. But versus like you just kind of go in blind. Yeah, the whole thing, I don't know if that was intentional, but the whole thing is an effective fog of war. You're like, the fuck's going on? What's Quahog? What's Juggler? What are we doing? Why are they putting it? And I think and whether or not you intended to, who cares? Take credit for it. it's an effective simulation of fog of war.
Well, yeah. Your fog of again, everything
Fog
is
of
very
war.
easy after the fact
Yeah.
to take all these data points and kind of string them up. If you're very meticulous and you say, well, we missed this little thing that happened at that moment in time. You say, the Beirut bombing. I was alive in 1983, and I know it occurred. And then, say 10 years, and that was during the Reagan administration. And during the Reagan administration, the opposing party would chip away at his him being the president and just say bad things, whatever. And one of the things that was said in his second term was he's kind of losing his mind, he's losing his marbles, he doesn't have his full faculties, yada yada yada. And with the clarity of 5 years after the fact, say the Beirut bombing, then they come up with all these criticisms. Well, he should have done X, should have done this,
Yeah.
should have done that. And I think that's always going to happen. Now, for the folks, again, you can be very, very critical of George Bush when the towers fell, right? You can be very critical of what we did, yada, yada. But at that very moment in time, I'd have to say that I think his initial action of going into Afghanistan was the right response. I was very supportive of George Bush, really even going into 2007, when we were taking so many casualties in Iraq. Mostly because what I respected, I may not have agreed with. First thing I did not agree with was nation building. That's just kind of beside the point.
Never works.
Well, it can work, but it's not going to work in that society. But I think what I did respect was, and it got to be a cliche, unfortunately, stay the course. And I think even in When Towers Fall, so in the first book, I do make some points about recruiting a source from whatever country, right? And you'll see that kind of across the series. My personal outlook is don't do it if you're not going to do it 100%.
Mm-hmm.
It is binary, it's on off. But when you go on, it's 100%. And let's say, so you start in When Towers Fall. You're introduced to Mojo, who's a SEAL. You'll see him again, right? I'm just telling you. You will see him in the next book take much more front and center. But you're seeing this kid. He's a young, petty officer when you're introduced. He's a very young man, and he gets attached to the Special Activities Division ground branch guys as a linguist. Yes, he is a SEAL. He's a killer, right? But he's really there to be an interpreter.
Terp, yeah.
Right? He's a terp. But you'll see his career progress, one thing after the next, and he gets swept up into this warlock kind of world as a player, right? Some of it's kind of luck. He's at the right place, and he gets selected to do, the airport thing or do the reconnaissance of one of the endpoints of Nord Stream. So you're just seeing this one individual career progression. So so he is in When Towers Fall. He's in the very beginning of the book. He's in Kurdistan, right? And there's a Kurdish very young guy who's not the top dude, right? He's just a young kid named Anzar or Azwar. I'm sorry. Well, you're going to see more. I mean, there's a progression of where these two make friends, Mojo and Azwar, over a course of time, over the course of 15 years, and that goes over a course of many operations. And my point really is, stay the course relates to If the United States of America says it's going to do whatever, and X country, we are selecting you as an ally. In this particular case, specifically, I'm talking about the Kurds, which is technically not a nation. They're an ethnic group that is across Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Iran, right? They're an ethnic group who desire to be their own country called Kurdistan. Anyway, so we befriend them as allies, but do we stick to them? Do we stay the course in a policy? And you can look at today's history at, might put that into question. And the big picture for me, from an unconventional warfare point of view, is if we say we're going to do something, we goddamn do it.
Yeah.
And that is taken, with, say, allies like the Kurds, or you can the same thing with our allies, England, right? The UK. When we make a promise, we stand by it. Now, there might be at a policy level a very deliberate decision the United States, the president, whoever might make and say, for the last 35 years, we've been allies with Pakistan. And we have determined that Pakistan is unreliable as an ally. We're going to adjust our relationship and our funding to them.
Yeah.
Accordingly.
Yeah.
And that's a very deliberate change. But you would announce it and say, we're not going to ally ourselves with Pakistan. We're going to ally ourselves with India, whatever.
Yeah.
So there is a limit to, our being friends, staying the course. But going back to Bush, he stated, okay, we went down this road. We're committed. We're going to stick to it. We're not going to pull out of this. And an example of that, I actually have never written. Well, I haven't to date written about it a lot, but it's coming. Say Somalia. We pursued a certain whatever in Somalia. The Clinton administration came on board. 18 Rangers died. He saw bodies come home in caskets, and it was bad for his polling.
Yeah.
And he just, we're done. We're pulling out.
Wouldn't give him AC-130s or
and,
tanks.
And you say, well, what was consequence of that? And never mind the AC-130s prior to, but what was the consequence of that? The United States of America reneged on a promise. Who observed that? A guy named Bin Laden. Right? So you're talking 1993. Bin Laden's doing his thing. And then 1998 hits, and you've got embassies in Nairobi and Tanzania both getting hit in 1998. Bin Laden taking credit. And of course, 9/11, 2001. He specifically stated in his fatwa that, hey, the United States is going to fold.
Yeah.
They're going to run away. So there's a consequence of you make a commitment as a nation, as a human being, as a man, but you make a commitment as a nation, and people are watching. No matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, people are watching the United States. They're always watching for cues of weakness or strength, and then they fall in line accordingly.
Yeah.
So I did admire him for his stick-to-itiveness. I do think he could have made some adjustments along the way. Again, just me, nation building. I didn't think it was going to go well, and I think we see that it did not. Neither there nor Afghanistan. But anyway, this kind of crap I'm rambling on. It is buried in the books. You might have to dig a little bit, but that's part. I have faith that the reader is going to read the words, but also probably do a little bit of analysis while they're reading it, and put one-on-one together in some places. I don't spoon feed every single thing. I mean, there's stuff you have to um, discern from what is written, I think. And to me, as a reader, I think that's part of the fun of reading.
Yeah. And Mike, tell everybody where to find your book and what your Twitter is. I gotta go pee. I'll be right back.
Hey, we did this last time. He left me hanging. He left me hanging. Okay, folks. I actually do have a website now, and it's one word: author Mike Bennett.com. And I'm starting a blog for some of my travels and that sort of thing. But the eventual hope there is, first thing, it'll be your conduit if you want to buy direct from me for signed books. If you buy all 6, I also throw in a cigar. But the most reliable way, and particularly if you want Kindle or some kind of electronic format, is on the Amazon site. You can put in there the Amazon search bar, put in the Warlock series, Mike Bennett. It should pop up. You put in Mike Bennett, When Towers Fall, Brine of War, it should pop up without any doubt. And then the page will come up. It says 7-book series, is actually only quote, only 6. The 7th book they're talking about is something I do at Christmas time, but Amazon don't take that off their website. They just keep the number 7 for whatever reason. There's 6 books, and they're listed, in order. So that's the way to purchase the stuff. The website, I mean, I just started it, so don't expect great, mounds of content. I'm still trying to get some of the links and whatnot to work properly. But that would be, by the end of the week, you should be able to order direct from me if you want the copies signed by the author. You won't be able to read my handwriting. No one can. But that is my signature. It is me. So that's how you get the books.
To kind of, I guess, on that note of George Bush, right? It's again very easy to look back, and I mean, I'm no necessarily fan of the occupation of Iraq, which ironically has not come about because I'm a hippie, but rather like the number of veterans I've interviewed, Green Berets, SEALs, Delta, whatever, and their thoughts on it, about the loss of life.
Mm-hmm.
But you also look back and you really, I mean, what was it? So the World Trade Center is 1,350 feet tall apiece in Lower Manhattan. The Pentagon on fire, hit by planes. They stop all air traffic in the United States. They were giving out Z-packs on Air Force One because they didn't know if there was a biological attack that had already occurred. That's one of the things from Garrett Graff's book, Only Plane in the Sky. To talk about the head physician giving everyone antibiotics because he was like, I'd rather them kind of all have like an upset stomach because they didn't need it than he was like, because we won't know until a couple days go by whether or not there was a biological attack. Or then like one guy on the plane, it was like a 2-week Z-Pack course, and one guy took all the pills at once, and he was like puking in the bathroom, and the doctor was like, he like wrote in his journal, he was like, we're gonna have like the only fatality on Air Force One on 9/11 because this dude took a bunch of antibiotics. But the point is it's all in hindsight, right? I mean, at the beginning of COVID, the doors of NORAD actually shut. They didn't know what it was, and we can always look back at it, and you can always say there's an overreach, but I mean, I was only 11, so I don't remember it that well. But you've got to look back at it. An attack.
You're talking 9/11.
Yeah. You got to look back at it.
Yeah.
Lower Manhattan, the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Bush it's staying in the air. No one knew he was at office. It's going all around. Dick Cheney's in the PEOC. No one knows what's going on. We notified Russia and we're like, hey, we're not getting ready to attack you, but we're going on a war footing. No one knows what's going on. There is no Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter. No one knows what the hell's going on. It's like when you drop, or not me, because it's the future now, but the trope of like back in the day, if you had a glass contact and you drop it, nobody move.
Right.
We don't know
Right,
where the
right.
contact is. It's the same thing. And then you go, oh wait, it's on my pinky. It fell on my pinky, but you didn't know that.
Well, when something of that significance happens, I mean, they're not unnatural. There's going to be an overreaction.
Yes.
Of the absolute immediate, immediate, and then a couple days later, we're having this anthrax.
Yeah.
Scare.
Yeah.
And I want to say, I think in the same general time frame, there was the DC sniper. The
Yeah.
guy
Not
that
too
was
long after that. Yeah.
that was
The
that was
dude
in
popping guys in DC. Yeah.
from the trunk of his car.
Had a little hole in it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there were, a confluence of events. Um, and there was overreaction, and really I would say the biggest overreaction was the Patriot Act.
Oh, sure.
I mean, they threw that thing out, and they really didn't know how to reel it back in, without massive legislative. I mean, they'd have to undo the Patriot Act itself. Um, uh, there was some some wisdom in the Patriot Act. What did obviously came very clear that it was these dudes from Saudi Arabia and Pakistan and whatnot. Um, so what did we do? We knee-jerk reaction with this very draconian piece of legislation that you couldn't undo without commensurate draconian legislative effort to repeal it. But the one thing I did not like in that period of time was, say, the reorganization you had, to create the Department of Homeland Security. Again, here's your little history thing. You go back 21 years and all this stuff is going on, and this seems to be the thing that is necessary to get us to function and to protect ourselves, to protect the homeland. Once it's in writing, in legislation, how do you undo it? And now you look at, where do we stand with Department of Homeland Security and what they're doing today?
Mm-hmm.
What was intended originally, what is being done today, I think are two very different things. So that's the danger in this fog of war and making poor decisions. Yes, it was stressful. Yes, it was hard. But even worse than that was, to me, the people that wrote that legislation. I want to say Hillary Clinton, but I'm not sure if she was actually a senator at that point. I don't remember.
I don't recall either.
But the folks that voted for several different things, not just that legislation, and then 2-3 years later turn their back on, well, yeah, I didn't really vote for that.
Yeah.
And we never held them accountable. Oh, yeah, you did. You voted for, here it is, X. And now, several years later, you're running for president, and your position is something entirely way out of whack with something you signed. This anyway. That's one thing we don't do well, is legislate under pressure, I think. That has probably nothing to do with my books at all, but that's just an editorial comment from my part, just observation. We have to be very careful when we put things in writing and sign it as law, because this IRA, the
IRS.
well, no,
The Inflation Reduction
the
Act.
Inflation Reduction Act. I mean, that's gonna,
That's another one.
I mean, that ain't even gonna make 3 years before you're gonna look at it and say,
What the
here's the
fuck is it?
numbers, here's the dollars that we're spending. Here,
Yeah.
oh, this bit about uh, people under $400,000, won't pay a cent. The ink hadn't even dried, and you could already refute that. So
Yeah.
anyway, that has nothing to do with anything.
No.
It
It's
does interest me. It does interest us all. That's why we want to choose wise people to be part of our government, with our consent.
what was the name of the program in Phoenix, Operation Phoenix. Right, the CIA backed quote unquote terror program by Doug Valentine. I've interviewed him before. It's a great book. But he talks about towards the end of the book, what we had been doing in all the different like territories and towns, and how we converted police station to like CIA hybrid centers, and we were working with the police and trying to find the names of the ringleaders and all that stuff. And he talks about towards the end of the book, one of the guys who had worked on Operation Phoenix comes back, and it's right after 9/11, and Department of Homeland Security, the fusion centers, and he said it was nearly a carbon copy of uh, of the tactics of Operation Phoenix, which was used to quell a nation. And the guy, some hardened intelligence official, I mean, according to Valentine, when he interviewed him, was just tearing up and was like, "Operation Phoenix has come home," and like no one knows it, no one realizes what this is,
Mm.
and it's been 21 years. We've got DHS fusion centers, right? It's this state power. And as Dr. Federer, who wrote a great book on socialism, talks about, it's like a socket wrench or something. He was like, government power, you can only crank it one direction, but you can't undo it.
Right.
And you can undo it, but it's a
Takes a
disproportionate.
whole
It's
lot. Yeah.
vote yourself in, shoot yourself out kind of
Right.
thing. And we're
So
seeing it now.
you mentioned Phoenix. Um, if you read in the book you just read, When Towers Fall, it's like on the fourth page. I'll just read the one sentence. Although he played a fairly minor role, his maturity and balanced intensity had been noticed by a former unit commander, Major General William Garrison, JSOC commander. Garrison was a Phoenix, um, grad or alumni.
Vet, yeah.
He was a bad dude, in a good way. He was just a bad Muldoon. His other, and this is really, I had personal loyalty to this guy for other reasons, but um, another, one of the biggest reasons I really became a not Bill Clinton fan was the whole Somalia thing, but specifically when we pulled out of Mogadishu and those 18 Rangers were killed. General Garrison was the JSOC commander, 2-star, and he was essentially relieved of command and sent out to pasture. And this is the guy, under his command that said, hey, we want AC-130 gunfighter support, one. And two, we don't want to be doing daylight raids, we want to be doing nighttime raids, etc. But he was hung out to dry, and his career was ended. The interesting thing about Garrison was he was promoted below the zone to major, lieutenant colonel. He was the youngest ever in the entire history of the Army, the youngest full bird colonel.
Really?
Because he'd been advanced, and accelerated. The guy's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
Is what it was. He's a bad dude, yes, but he was a brilliant officer, brilliant man. He's truly one of the best that, that we've ever produced kind of people as far as military officers. And he got, his career ended at 2-star. He ended up going to be the commanding general of the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center School, SWCC. And then he punched out, from there. And if you watch the movie Black Hawk Down, one of the things in it that I really liked that I thought, is totally accurate is Garrison always had a unlit cigar.
Curtis, throwback to Curtis.
And he always had that in his hand, and he never lit the damn thing up. He was a cool guy.
Did LeMay ever light his?
I have no idea, but and maybe that's where he got it from. But that was kind of his trademark.
LeMay was always chomping on one. No, LeMay did smoke them because there's a story of him going to a flight line full of B-52s and like there's like a leak and like the whole like hangar was full of jet fuel, and he's smoking a cigar. One of the guy goes, he goes, General, you really can't smoke in here. If that, if an ember falls, this whole row of planes is going to go up in flames. And LeMay looks at all the planes and he goes, they wouldn't dare. I think that's a great line. But to kind of pivot from the fog of war, it's easy to criticize at Heinz. I'm no Biden fan. I'm very open about that. And I'm on one hand, I'm a 32-year-old that's never seen a day of combat, so my opinion on geopolitics means fuck all. On one hand, I have just your normal human tugs at your heart, right? You see people in Ukraine, just average Joes like me, just getting. I was lucky. I was born in the United States and had an education. Parents are still married. Had a wonderful upbringing. Some people got to roll the dice where they're in Ukraine. On one hand, we just got out of a 20-year occupation. I interviewed last summer a guy who was at Kabul Air Base, lost several of his friends. And I go, why are we getting involved in this? This isn't unique. As Dale Comstock, the Delta guy, who says, we are the warring ape. It will never end. It's been going on since the pyramids. It will continue to starships. It will go on forever. This isn't our beef. And I get that. And I feel that. It's, I'm not sending, I don't have kids, but I'm not sending my son. I'm not going over there. So it's easy for me to say, oh, we should help them. On the other hand, I look at it from more of an abstract point of view of the world is watching, just like they watched us pull out of Somalia, just like bin Laden watched us. And maybe that the value of this isn't necessarily helping Ukraine, but it's more of a symbolic, we will be there in one form or another, either through fun. And again, I personally am not for us being involved in Ukraine. I don't give a shit. But from what you just said about Somalia, really in the last 20 minutes, I've kind of rechanged my opinion. It might be important.
I hate to say, read the next book.
All right.
The Baltic Chain.
All right.
In which, again, you're going back in time, if you will, or these events are occurring real time in our past, right? So I mean, these things are happening 2009, 2010, 2011, whatever. The next book. So I introduced the idea in When Towers Fall. One, the Warlock guy. And then I start kind of peeling back, who are our enemies? Who are the enemies of the United States? And I introduce the idea, and I think I make a pretty good case, Turkey and Erdogan. Not really Turkey so much as specifically Erdogan. And then that's kind of how things unfold, there. But the point in the book really is there is collusion at the very least between Turkey and Russia in the construct of this Turk stream, like Nord Stream, but Turk stream that goes under the Black Sea. So I mean, so you got a Turkey, Russia little thing going on, and I'm trying to put a wedge between these two countries so they don't get too friendly. That's the whole idea of the operation. That's small scale kind of unconventional warfare. I'm gonna get the big stuff, Ukraine, in a minute. So the next book, I turn my sight on, really for the most part, Russia, you know, via Syria, etc. But I start doing direct action, small scale direct action in the Donbass area, or Tartus, Syria, which, if you remember, when Syria became an issue, the Obama administration said, well, hey, here's the deal. If Assad uses chemical warfare, gloves are off.
Red line in the sand.
Red line in the sand. And he did not. I mean, it was days later, they're dropping these 55-gallon drums full of, I don't know, whatever,
VX.
bad shit. And we did nothing. While that's going on, we're saying, hey, the guy's using, weapons of mass destruction. That includes chemical stuff, not just nukes. And, all the Kerrys of the world, whatever, the State Department kind of folks. And, the solution for them was, well, let's have Russia negotiate the evacuation of chemical weapons out of Syria. Just think about that. We're going to let Russia negotiate that and manage that. In that process, Russia also got control of a port on the Med, the very west of Syria, called Tartus. They still do. So Russia gets a little foothold in Tartus on the Med, directly beneath NATO flank, technically Turkey. And that, was kind of an eye opener. We did nothing in Syria at the time when we could have. We let it go too far, and it was already over by the time we did get involved. But that's neither here nor there. We took no action. It was all about inaction. It was all about, can't really get involved in this because I have a re-election coming up.
Yeah.
But anyway, so in the Baltic chain, the warlock says, okay, we're going to start fucking with Russia now. And we're going to spread them so thin that they just can't see straight. So we're doing things in Tartus, and I think it's Latvia is the airhead, the airport in Syria that Russia has access to, all on the west side. And also in the Donbass and Crimea, as well as just a little bit going on in Georgia. So, I mean, I get all this kind of stuff going on, but the target is Russia. That's unconventional warfare, very, 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 very small scale. I'm just going to bleed these guys with 1,000 cuts. Now, going back to what you were saying with what are we doing today in Ukraine? Well, we've decided to do what we did in Afghanistan in 1979 with Stinger missiles, very low cost, times 8,500,000.
Yeah, it's a big new Brzezinski.
The 50. I think we're at about 60 billion. That's publicly known, and it's probably more than that. So
way more than that.
A good chunk of money, American treasure. And technically, you could make an argument that based on my books, and I'm a special forces guy, I'm an advocate for unconventional proxy war. You can make that argument, but what we're doing in Ukraine is kind of, that's total super big league as far as the doctrinal idea of what is supposed to be a fairly discreet effort, fairly small.
It's not covert. It's not covert at all.
Well, I mean, it is kind of sort of not really, but and this is one of those things, again, you could say I'm an advocate of it just because of my background, but I have to say still, there's two things. One, we're a country $30 trillion in debt. I don't know if this is the wise thing to do. But at the same time, go back to what I said earlier, we have made obligations to our allies and the recognition that without a fucking doubt, Russia, they ain't on our team.
Of course.
They're bad guys. I really don't want Russia to renegotiate JCPOA, but they are. So Russia is my enemy. That's pretty clear when you read the Baltic chain. When I look at that little slice of it, and I kind of, I understand there was this color war stuff going on, yada yada, but I'm still kind of, you got to make a choice. Who you gonna stack behind? Am I going to support Russia or am I going to support Ukraine? Even as corrupt as Ukraine is, and they've got this Azov
and they're Nazi,
Nazi fucking thing going on.
Yeah.
But still, in the very big picture of things, they're the better guy than Russia. Or you could just flat out say we're not going to get involved at all. Yeah. And of course, then there's going to be some kind of genocide. So the president is skewered on this. There's no good, there's no bad. No matter what he does, at least 50% of the country is going to say bad things. But in this case, I can only say that today, after this weekend, where you see a turn of events with this Ukrainian offensive and a large salient of Russian stuff is collapsing. Now you're seeing success with all this munitions and stuff that we've given.
Sure.
But it's still, it ain't over yet. We had a discussion this morning, there's a whole lot of different things that could go on. Winter is still coming, yada, yada. So, and that kind of was the point between when towers fall, when I'm cutting these natural gas pipelines, or I'm interdicting them to the point where I can just fuck around with billing to make someone think that they're being shorted. Hey, I'm supposed to receive 100 barrels. I only got 93. Where's my 7?
Yeah.
Just to create conflict between these countries. Turn up the volume a little bit more in the Baltic chain, and I flat out state Russia, the only reason why they have power is because of their oil, money, leverage that they have. And, I wrote this stuff way before. Now you're seeing, hey, look what's going on with Ukraine and Russia and Germany. We're going to do sanctions. And Germany, is, I think, something about like 90% reliant on Russian oil. They have made such foolish decisions in Germany over the last couple decades. They've shut down all their nuclear stuff and all their coal stuff, and they're 100% reliant. But either way, I make some adjustments in the Baltic chain, but the target, without a doubt, 100% is Russia, and you'll see how that's handled in a fun way.
I'm kind of with you on, yeah. I mean, the idea that Ukraine is some innocent child is beyond naive.
Or specifically, probably Zelensky himself.
Zelensky,
maybe not
that. Yeah. No, sure, not the average. Yeah, not the average. The average Joe is just like unlucky roll of dice. They didn't grow up in suburban Atlanta and get I have a wonderful life. But there's also something important about, if you want to be the hegemon, you're also picking up slack in ways that others don't, right? It's like there's like the story of this guy, some football player that went to hang out with like Tom Brady. Tom Brady invited her. They're on different teams. It was the off season. He's like, I never actually got to meet him and talk to him. And he's like, so I thought we were going to his house and we are just gonna, shoot the shit, maybe watch some like video. And he goes, so I show up and he's like, I'm in like my Gucci shirt and like my jeans. And he was like, and I ruined them because we were in Brady's backyard of his mansion. And he was just running plays with me. He's like throwing lasers, like bruising my hands, screaming at me. And he was like, it was like a beautiful 70-degree Saturday. And he was like, catch the fucking ball. And he was like, Jesus Christ. And it's like,
Was he trying to recruit him to come to the
I don't
Patriots?
know. I don't know if he was feeling him out, but what the guy said is he's like, oh, he doesn't turn it off. And I look at it as like funny because I'm kind of a psychopath with work ethic, but it's also like that's what comes with it. You don't get to, they said Michael Jordan so competitive that he used to be on like the Bulls plane and he'd take bets and said he was also addicted to gambling, whose baggage would come out of the
Right,
carousel first.
right.
And then he would get off the plane first and go pay off like the airport workers to make sure his came out first. There's a guy worth $1 billion. And there are some drawbacks, right? To
Yeah,
be the monster, to be the ace, it also comes with like, hey, he also doesn't know how to turn it off and those drawbacks. So to be America, America, fuck yeah, all memes aside, it also means that in a wildly unpopular thing like Russia, Ukraine, how about neither? That's fine, but you're not going to be America. You're going to be fucking Norway. Nothing against Norway. I've never been there. I'm sure it's cool or not. I don't fucking know. Maybe they're a bunch of pedophiles. I don't know. The point is you have to get involved in things that maybe you don't want to be involved in. If you want to be Tom Brady, you want to have 7 Super Bowl rings, you
yeah.
also throw lasers on a Saturday and scream at someone you've never met before. Maybe you have to go in and you have to send 60, and I don't know, but maybe you have to send $60 billion. Maybe you have to give them stingers and Carl Gustavs and whatever. You have to do
Again,
that.
we're gonna kind of, and when I say we're going to see what happens, what I really mean probably is, let's say Russia collapses this offensive, yada yada, and they pull out, and really that could happen between today and the U.S. election in 2024.
Yeah.
Really is what the context I'm putting it in. And then we're just going to hear endless crowing of the great strategies of this particular president, yada yada yada. And whereas it was not really going swimmingly at one point, he turned it around. So it'll become a political nightmare. From the I have to say I'm torn. You know, I do happen to kind of believe in unconventional warfare. My books are pretty clear on that.
Yeah.
But there's a level of scale, uh, and all my stuff is very covert type stuff. It's all non-attributional. It's none of this, this
Yeah.
stuff that we're seeing.
Yeah.
So to me, that's totally different. Anyway, we're talking apples and oranges. But the broader context I look at the whole thing is Russia is not our friend. They are grasping for power, and they're doing so probably at the behest of China. So it's something we have to address. Maybe it's a $60 billion solution. I don't know. But I do know this. I would say whatever we have done, probably again at the big level scale, is ineffective. The original sanctions where we cut off Russian oil from whatever, all that shit just ended up in India and China as far as oil. So Russia's still making bank.
Mm-hmm.
They're still making a lot of money on natural gas and oil. So there's kind of a failure, number one. And again, the point I'm making probably mostly in Baltic chain is, Russia is a power because of natural gas and oil, period. Now they do have other things. They have stuff like gold. They have a real large bunch of gold, and I think they have uranium also. Physical, the physical ore uranium. So they do have resources. But either way, pulling a stunt like I make the point in the Baltic chain. The stuff that Russia did against Georgia in South Ossetia, and they did against the Donbass and Crimea, the annexation of Crimea during the Obama administration. Again, I mean, it didn't really take a rocket scientist, and that was like what, 2011, something like that.
I think it was 14.
Just very short. Yeah, it was 2014. But so shortly after the line in the sand with Syria, I think you're right. It was after the elections of 2014. And then, hey, this whole thing in Crimea, yeah, you're going to get a free pass on that too. Those things have consequence. And you knew it was going to then. You knew that, well, that's not really a good precedent to set because Russia is aching to go, west, expand west. And as you saw in Brian of War, they're also in Africa. So the bad guy in the Baltic chain, without any doubt, is Wagner Group. And then you saw that once again in Brian of War. Some of the books is very clear who the small bad, like you said in the last time we talked, the big bad is China. The big bad might be in one book Russia. The big bad. There's, Christ, we could talk forever. And this is just one. We haven't even talked about the Middle East. We haven't even talked about what's going on in South America. I mean, it's pretty complicated stuff. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Do you think
never mind domestic?
Fucking microphone's coming undone. Yeah, I mean, I always have to be careful because for like 4 years I made fun of people that were just rabid at the mouth and who screamed about what Trump did no matter what it was, and I was just
still
like,
doing that.
Yeah, and I was just like, it's a total. Sorry, this is bothering me. It's just a total.
What was bad about that? In some cases, they were absolutely right. It was justified.
Yeah,
I mean,
but when you scream nonstop, it doesn't go through.
Yeah,
and
pick your battles.
Yeah, and I always laughed at that. I'm like, you don't have, like, you're not even having coherent, independent thoughts. It's just Orange Man bad. And in a weird way, they became more devout supporters of him than anybody else. Because whereas a supporter might say, yeah, I don't like that part, all they do is instinctually say I want the opposite of what Trump says. Well, how long until Trump just starts saying the opposite of what he wants? And now you are his most steadfast.
And here's the thing about history. They can just point back to when Trump came on board, he undid whatever Obama did.
Yeah.
And all we're going to get, and I'm not taking a position here or there, is finger pointing and, well, they did so. It's like, the two brothers broke, well, he poked me first.
Yeah.
Well, he poked me. Well, eventually, the adults have to kind of take charge and say, okay, we're going to stop that and we're going to proceed forward. But
to branch from that, though, so the reason I say that is I have to be aware of myself. And am I opposing this because it's happening during the Biden administration? I have to have some awareness. Or
when you say oppose, this being what?
XYZ.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I have to look at it and go, if Trump came out and said, we're adding 87,000 new, I would like to think I would say, no, fuck that. But I don't know, because I'm a human and my own lenses are flawed and fogged. So you said, let's say it's 2024. Let's say Russia collapses, and it's going to be, oh, Biden's tactic was brilliant. Would they be wrong?
If we don't really know.
Sure.
I'll make it even worse. There's a guy on Twitter I follow, and he is an economist kind of guy. He's a really smart business person. And in one of his things on a private chat sort of deal, he asserted to our little group, he said, well, I hate to say it, but I think, we're going to have inflation down to about 3% 2024. And I said, just in time for the election, you tell me you think it's going to drop down to 3%? And he's like, yeah, I do. And I just sat there and I was like, God, I can, and there is a natural rise and fall of all these things, right? I mean, there's this cyclical nature, and obviously all that stuff is debatable and what have you, but I do think it will fall from the 8, 9, 10% that it was. It's just going to I mean, if we were at 10% inflation from this June, until 2024, I would tell you we probably would cease to exist to be a functioning
Yeah.
nation. I mean,
Yeah.
we would just we would be crushed. We would be crumbling. So it would, reduce to some degree. You know, maybe 8, maybe 7, even as just say 6. 6% inflation. It's not trifling if you're paying a mortgage or whatever, food bills, but it ain't 10, 11, 12. And even that, you're going to have a candidate saying, the IRA knocked inflation down 4, 5 points, 6 points. We dropped, look at
Look how
today's
good it
Twitter.
is. Yeah.
Look at today's Twitter. We have dropped the gasoline prices from, not, they don't say from to what, but gasoline prices have dropped in the last 6 weeks, 97 cents, whatever the numbers are. All very convenient little arguments at that little speck of time. So that's, we'll see what happens with this Russian whatever. And again, that's great. That's great. We're still at $30 trillion debt.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's still absolutely a lot of work that has to be done. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like maybe us aiding Ukraine is like I said earlier, it's like if you want to be the hegemon, if you want to be the big dick player, you have to be involved. But it's also, in a sense, you could argue that there's street cred, right? It's European countries are going, oh, America does show up. Taiwan's going, oh, America will show up, right? You could maybe even argue, and I don't believe this, but let's play devil's advocate. You could maybe even say we're really trying to show up in Ukraine because we fumbled the withdrawal from the Middle East so poorly. I don't know, but maybe you just can't not be involved. To not be involved either shows that you're unable to be involved or unwilling, and that's fine if you're just some random country. But if you want to hold the position that we've held, you maybe have to be involved.
Well, and the only caveat to that, I'd say, um, is whatever course that you take, it must be deliberate and it must be articulated to the American people.
And follow through. Yeah, like you said,
You know,
don't no, you
so
don't.
so if we did reverse course, I mentioned earlier, just Pakistan as, or pick a place, based on these specified priorities, boom, 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 we're going to reduce our presence, whatever monetary presence, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And there was, at a point in time, the United States just had implicit clout. If they breathed, if they said anything, people listened.
Hmm.
I think that's diminishing, uh, and that may be the case. Whatever, maybe it is, but it's essential that, again, this is me, to how would I manage all this, is to determine the absolute priorities. These things we have to do now. These things, dun, 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 dun. And that means that this, and this, and this, we're not pursuing deliberately because they're not in that top level tier. Yeah, I kind of make that point in Brian of War. We have fallen so far behind on these rare earths or lithium uh, mining, that how can we pursue a radical green agenda in the United States predicated on resources that we don't control?
Yeah.
We're just putting money into the Bank of China.
Yeah.
So if we did determine that, hey, we're not going to go into Ukraine, that would require a very stringent effort for an analysis, because eventually you would have to present it to the American people and to the world. We are not going to get involved in Ukraine for the following reasons. Boom, 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 boom. But what I'm saying is, and I'm hoping I don't sound like I'm contradicting myself, is, one of the data points is they're $30 trillion in debt. That's like way up there in the assumption. That's right, way up there. That's a consideration that is very high. Yada yada. You can make a case. You can make a case that now is not the time for the United States to take a lead in, da 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 da. We've said it before. You didn't listen to us. Europe, you're on your own. That sort of thing. But part of, say Trump did kind of say that so many words. He said, "Hey, NATO, if you countries don't pay your 2% as is specified in your obligation of the treaty, we're gonna, we're gonna ding you."
Yeah.
With the United States, we're not paying everything. And then you extrapolate that even further and just say, this Ukraine thing, until they go over the Article 5 threshold trip, it's not NATO business. It's not my problem. There's a lot of sticky issues out there, and that's what being a president is. I mean, they're supposed to make the decisions on all these things. It ain't an easy job. I have no idea why anyone would want the job. I don't care what party. I don't care. I mean, that is a hard job. But if you're committed to certain ideals or whatever, and you have a plan, a comprehensive plan of all the stuff, maybe it is green energy, whatever it is, and you lay that out there, and this is the plan, and pursue it. Okay, great. I'm not sure. It would seem to me that if you're pursuing a green energy plan, whatever, when you look at the dollars involved, and then something like Ukraine pops up, you'd say, well, that's really not in my plan, and I can't really adjust around it, responsibly, without incurring another $6-7 trillion of debt. So my decision is predicated on and this is where we are. That was December, January of last year.
So Eisenhower said to JFK, I think the day before his inauguration, said only the tough decisions get to you. If it's an easy softball, some senator or secretary is going to take it for their own political clout.
Sure.
He's like, you get the shit where there's no winning.
Right. And and that's part of the job. And you have to have the character, and to a degree, Joe Biden does. I'm going to do this thing. And I may not like it, but that is his position.
He's carrying, he's picking up, whether you like him or not, he is picking up all the fucking mud and the pig shit that nobody wants to touch.
Some things. I mean, there have been things that he has just not.
Sure.
Bobbled. And as did Trump, as did Bush, they all do. It's a tough job. It's not a job I want. I just want to be the warlock, man.
I just want to be in a wave to USAP and just sit back and pull the strings and just detachment, just go through it all and just do what needs to be done.
What I'm really hoping is, say 10 years from now, some historical genius type reads these books, knowing that they're 10 years old and the things that I say, and then with the activities that actually happened in that period of time, he could go back and say, okay, if we really did X that we did in When Towers Fall, this is what would have happened. Just slay me, probably. And particularly when you start stacking each of the books, and the covert activity in one is followed by 2 or 3, and the next is followed by 2 or 3, and then when you add all those up, what would I have put the world in recession? When you get the boom slang gambit, you'll see what I mean. But it's fiction, so I can do that.
You can do whatever you want.
The stuff it's pretty plausible as it is written, from a tactical point of view. Now, the actual consequence of doing these things, when I look at when towers fall and Baltic chain combined, in my mind, I think we would have prevented the actual war that we're in Ukraine. And when you get to that, you might agree. I don't know. You might not.
Well, maybe we could do excuse me, we could do a little thought exercise and say, if we maybe there's some guy looking back and right now in 2022 looking back, almost like you just said, man, if we had done X, Y, and Z, we wouldn't be here. Maybe there's a calculation of going, all right, well, that's in the past. We can't change it. How do we shift now?
Right.
There might be a calculation that says, hey, $200 billion to Ukraine has a high likelihood of preventing a $2 trillion Cold War with Russia. It might be that we might be taking the most
Yeah.
frugal route. I have no idea.
Yeah. And
I
I
don't
don't
know.
think, I mean, we've taken, a course of action we are pursuing, thinking it's the right thing. And it is definitely, it could go either way.
Yeah.
And I mean, to look at it right now and conclude it's absolutely wrong, you really can't.
You can't. You can't.
Now,
Yeah.
I can conclude it can be challenged, but I can conclude we cannot afford it.
Oh,
$30
sure.
trillion in debt.
Oh, sure.
I mean, and that could be a very callous thing to say in the context of people dying over there, all that good stuff. But I mean, I I could defend that position just based on the money, just based on what I would consider our national interests. And then you start adding, we did the sanction, we did all this kind of stuff. It is very difficult to say whether or not Putin and Xi long time ago kind of war gamed this whole thing out and said, hey, if we do X being invade Ukraine, what do you think the United States is going to do? Or what is the West going to do? And then Xi's like, what's fucking Putin's first name? Vlad. Well, Vlad, I think, Europe will sit around with their thumb up our ass and they'll expect the Americans to just do everything. Well, okay. And then, what they're going to do? They're going to do sanctions. Yeah, that sounds good. Well, what can we do? Well, if they do sanctions, well, we can try to do all the oil trade not on the dollar denomination. I tell you what, Mr. Putin, as the guy in China, Xi, I'll buy oil from you in yuan. What do you think about that? Hey, that sounds good. And what we did is the playbook that started getting written probably, at least in the 90s, maybe before. It's very, it's coming.
Yeah.
We have a playbook and we pull it out every time and we go check. Okay, what's next? Check. So I would just say, my books, I don't adhere to that playbook. The whole idea is everything is done preemptively, so we're not reacting. Everything we do is a reaction to someone else's stuff. And the real world, when we do react, it's very, very predictable. And it really, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that Xi and Putin sat down and said, well, if they do such and such, what do you think about,
Yeah.
kicking the dollar denomination to the curb for oil, whatever. So yeah, my stuff is fiction. Some of it's kind of based on reality, what have you, or maybe wishful thinking of, hey, I think we should do X. But hell, it is entertaining. That's at least that.
Maybe the whole thing is, I don't know. Maybe this is being set up to throw negative light on the Belt and Road Initiative. Maybe it's like, hey, remember when Trump said that Russia was going to turn off Nord Stream and you laughed and then he did? Might be like, hey, nobody participate in Belt and Road Initiative because they're going to fuck you too. I don't know. Doesn't seem that
I
thought
tell you,
out.
the only problem with that is it's when you're a very, very poor country.
You don't care.
Yeah, I mean, it's very
You can't
compelling.
care.
It's compelling, and
Absolutely is.
particularly if there's corruption. Like
Yeah.
I don't give a shit if we're gonna
Fucking dump it in
very
the ocean. I don't care. Give it to me.
right. So um, that really that is a very seductive proposal for Xi to go into Sri Lanka and build a port.
Yeah.
And you'll see that in Boomslang Gambit.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they don't give a shit. It's you having stuff that you can't have. We don't have streetlights in
Now,
America.
the irony is, the United States through USAID has done this sort of thing, but perhaps not to the level that China has.
Yeah.
I don't know the dollar. I mean, I know we've spent a lot of money, but it's been, on wells so they can drink pure water. China's like, I don't fucking give a shit if they're drinking parasites.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want them to have a port so I can take all
Yeah.
their copper ore out of their and put on the port, ship it to me so I can make stuff and make money.
Yeah.
They're quite ruthless. There's no doubt. We do not match them in that regard, because we're the good guys. The unfortunate thing is we really don't get a lot of credit for being the good guys.
Yeah.
So in my
That's-
books, I'm not such a good guy in certain
maybe
things.
it's maybe the whole price of being the good guy. Maybe there actually is a value to it. No one would suspect warlockian activities. America's the
Well,
good guys. They'll fucking pick up the tab. Maybe so they'll never expect us.
yeah, we are getting people taking advantage of us, but
Yeah.
there is a have to see something positive. People are still coming here
That's
when
and
they
this is
leave Uruguay, when they leave Chad, whatever. They still want to come here.
well, that's what I was
Uh,
gonna say is and
so
maybe it's doe-eyed and naive, and maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but there is a reason that if you're gonna leave,
well,
you're going to
yeah,
one place and one place only.
but the bad side of that is, say back in the 50s, 60s, maybe 70s, um, people left communist countries because they were being repressed.
Yeah.
Now there were people in our country in the United States that doubted that as being they're like, oh, no, communism is, it's not that bad. People left Czechoslovakia, Hungary, all these places because they were being repressed by a Soviet Union type thing, and they came here because they knew we were free. Again, that's the good side. So go forward 20, 40, whatever years. Um, People are coming here for a different reason. They're coming here because they think they're going to get entitlements and a free ride.
That's true as
Now,
well.
that's not quite so desirable.
That's true.
Yes, they are coming here because they're going to get a free ride, and that is not really where we want to be.
Yeah.
If their motivation is just coming here for entitlement money, that's not the way to go. We don't really want that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I don't know. I've as always, I'm more confused at the end than I was at the beginning.
so I don't know if people listen to these entire podcasts, but let's just talk about what you thought about the book specifically, just the book itself, without the context of kind of stuff we've.
Everything else.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in love with the warlock. I'm in love with the idea of a hidden hand. The Stoli selection, going in the Delta, all that good stuff. That's fine. The Stuxnet was dope. But more than anything, I kind of the most attractive thing to me is the idea of a warlock. That kind of steals the show for me.
Well,
Is
that's good. I'm pleased because
that's what it is. It's a
I mean
great
that
book,
that
but
that certainly is distinctive, probably from other offerings out there. It
yeah,
is certainly different uh, in the context of, I make, again, some of it is training, if you will, for you, the reader, I'm talking about Title 10 versus Title 50 and all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff. So I mean, some people will learn, what does the CIA do? What makes them distinctly different?
Yeah. From
And
DOD.
then
Yeah.
and then extrapolate beyond that. You say, never mind CIA with its covert,
Charter.
based on a presidential finding, you get a covert authorization, blah, 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 blah. Is there really a need to go beyond? I mean, that's the whole idea with the warlock. You get the JRTF, Joint Reconnaissance Task Force, which is another kind of tier player, like a Delta, like a SEAL Team 6. And then you have this warlock dude who basically, and it's extrajudicial. It's, the
Tier
only thing that
tier zero.
stops him from being a total madman is his personal integrity and his personal integrity. I did have a reader post their review on When Towers Fall just this weekend. A very short, succinct thing. He says the author takes you behind the scenes, and it gives you hope to think that there are people out there with honor and integrity. That was his thing. And he says thoroughly enjoyed. And then on my tweet, to the world, I stated, sometimes it is satisfying as an author to read such a wonderful yet insightful review. Of course, I do that. The page refreshes and fucking moves. But I say, yes, we do have such people with integrity in this still great country. Rest easily, America. The warlock will find them and put them to task. So it's, to me, any writer, I'm sure, it's interesting what people will get out of a book. You've kind of seized on the idea of the warlock. You like that. There's going to be other people that, again, I'm waiting for the review where the guy gives me a 1 star and he's like, "Oh, stupid bastard! You did this. You'd put the world into recession, and there'd be global famine." And I'm still waiting for someone to refute any of the things and say this is impossible. Because
Yeah.
there's people out there like that. There's the people that watch Star Wars and they're like, "Well, wait a minute, no, Luke couldn't say that because of the," and they go into this long thing about whatever.
If there's a guy who was in, I think, FBI HRT, Christopher Whitcomb, became an author, and I read his book in 2007 when I was in high school.
What,
It's
what,
called
what, okay, go ahead.
it's called Black. It's just about black ops, and then there's a sequel called White, and that
Is this
I
a
d
fiction or nonfiction?
fiction. I mean, but
Okay.
very, very, very like yours. It's almost a Tom Clancy-esque, like, "Do you know this shit?" Like, kinda thing. It's
I don't know a damn thing, man.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just a writer.
yeah, tell it, yeah. Um, but if I recall, it's been 15 years, I've been meaning to reread them. I've tried to get him on the podcast, I can't get in touch with them, but if I recall, there is a, like, Warlockian figure in the private sector who kinda does shit, doesn't ask anyone, and he's, like, a deeply moral, flawed person, but he's kind of it's like the Black Ops to the Black Ops. It's like
Hmm.
CIA does its own thing without DOD.
I have, because people have asked me, "Hey, you gonna write something, domestic, a warlock for domestic?" And I'm like, dude, you know, our domestic issues are so so ugly. I ain't gonna touch that.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I don't know if you need.
I really want to avoid that. I really do. I just want to
Yeah, no,
avoid
I don't think the Warlock I think the whole idea of the Warlock is that he wouldn't even be bogged down by domestic issues. It's more of an international player, and that's
Well,
what and
again, as you kind of roll through the books, I'm not as burdened by those things. Like, and I'll tell you, When Towers Fall is the lower tier of all of them as far as intensity and
mhm,
cool factor. Um, risk, um, they start cranking up considerably as you get down the chain, and you read the last one. But part of it is these things are necessary because we have done nothing. We have done nothing effective to deter these things from coming around. So now, the warlock comes out of mothballs, and he does his thing, and he only comes out on these really big issues that he can, make an impact on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of I had a different reviewer make a comparison to the book Dune, which I haven't read, but I did watch the latest movie with Timothy, I Wear a Dress, Chalamet, whatever his name is.
I don't know. I have no idea.
I think he's French, but he's an actor, and he was just on some red carpet event, and he was one of these guys wearing a dress kind of
I unplugged.
thing.
I unplugged from it all.
Yes, I can understand why.
I don't.
But
yeah.
anyways, so the movie is very good, but there's this I think it's Bene Gesserit. There's almost like a religious order that's kind of like the warlock. So they're behind the scenes and all kinds of stuff. They're not part of the government, but they influence greatly. And he said, I read your book, and it reminds me of Clancy because of just kind of the scope of stuff, and it reminds me of Dune because of this Bene Gesserit. And I read the review. I'm like, I have no fucking idea what he's talking about. What's the hell? So I looked at the Wikipedia site, specifically for Dune, and they said, okay, there's that thing, Bene Gesserit. Click on that little link, and what's all that about? And then when it's described, and I was like, yeah, that's so yeah. I guess I'm not the first guy that probably thought of this sort of thing.
Well, I like your version. Mike, well, we've been running for almost 2 hours, so I said let's wrap this one up. I'll absolutely do the next book. I'd love to keep talking to you, man. You're a cool fucking guest. Yeah.
Well, I think the next one you'll like. It starts, I start ratcheting the pain. Book 3 probably is you really start seeing the good stuff. So I think you'll enjoy that one if you you already get to the end of the chain. Brine of War is pretty explicit and intense in its in its madness, but
I think it's fucking awesome. I think and I do still think that you need you do need to flesh out a little more of the background of the warlock.
Well, that's I've been given a lot of thought to that timeline. I think we mentioned the last time, I think the guy's age is going to predicate he's going to be Vietnam vet.
Yeah.
But I think I will throw into that actual Vietnam vet his trainers, his influencers. So that does get me back to World War II, because there's definitely some things I want to kind of pull out. And again, my experience in these type of organizations is they'll say, they're looking for a certain cut of cloth. It is the absolute individual person they're looking at when they select someone, because he meets a very specific set of attributes, and it's all about character, and that's why the first book, it's all about John Prescott. It's all about who he is and what why is he like this. So you get this glimpse of this guy's entire life, his professional life, because this stuff matters. And just like this gentleman Tim wrote in his review, I'm kind of sad that perhaps he or anyone else feels that way, that they actually think that there aren't people like this in the United States of America. There are. I'm telling you, people out there listening, they're out there. And excuse me, there are some very, very good people still in this country. We need to recognize that, and have some faith. You can see what we're going through right now is dark times. Could be the worst, could be somewhere near the worst, could be nowhere near the worst. But it's probably not optimal, I guess, is I would certainly say. And there's one way out of this, and it's through the people around you, the Americans around you. Someone will take charge, and then someone will follow, and will make the right decisions as a nation. Collectively, eventually, this will just spin and spin and spin and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and we'll come back. We'll come back because we're Americans, and it is just as simple as that.
It really is. We'll get back. We will. I mean, if I've seen it in my own life, from being in perfect shape, 4.0 student, getting into medical school, spoken hot girlfriend, to
Yeah, I had all that stuff, man.
yeah, well, right
4.0.
after college. I mean, I scored in the 95.6 percentile in the MCAT, scored in the 99th percentile getting into pharmacy school. I published research in aquatic toxicology all before I was 23. I lost a brother to suicide, and when I was in April 2014. Then I gained about 70 pounds, got on a bunch of drugs, was unemployed for several years, became a real piece of shit, had to move home to my parents' house and basically relearn how to live like an adult. And now where I am now, self-employed, podcast, making its own money, paying its own rent, working out every day, sober, working my hardest, saving money, taking on responsibility, trying to be the best person I can, trying to never blame anyone for anything. I came back.
And everyone can. Everyone can.
If Absolutely. if I can, this fucking country can.
I mean, and that mindset. I mean, when I hear you say that, and I do think, George Bush, stay the course.
Winston Churchill, if you find yourself in hell, keep walking.
You personally are responsible, and you have to be committed. It ain't going to happen unless you commit to making those changes.
Yeah.
And the only thing I do want to just a funny point out of When Towers Fall, the book we were talking about to some degree. Chapter 14, I'm talking about this guy, Ensign Stu Hogan. It's actually the name of a person I grew up with who was a runner. The name is Stu Hogan. But the character, when they're talking about the guy being at the all-male jock dorm Oak Hall at University of Maine, Orono, that whole paragraph is a real person. I won't say his name, but it's a real person. The guy was the most squared away fucking guy I've ever met in my life. He literally got a 3.8 in a dual major of chemical and electrical engineering. And I will just tell you, I did not get a 4.0. I didn't get a 3. I didn't come anywhere near any of that. So
I had a not a friend, but I knew him. 4.0 triple major who got into medical school and law school. Wasn't a pre-med student or pre-law, just decided to take the MCAT and the what's the law school
LCAT.
one?
LCAT.
Is it the LCAT? I think it's something else.
So. Something
Maybe
like
LCAT.
that.
I don't know. Aced them both, like 99 percentile. And then on a whim, his senior year was like, I think I'm gonna be a surgeon. And I think he went and got into like Duke, man. And I was like, oh, and this guy played in a band, was a ladies band. I was like, fuck this guy. Like,
yeah, everything came easy to him.
I was like, motherfucker, I'd studied for the MCAT for 9 months.
You hate them, but you gotta love them at the same time.
God, dude, you're like, you're this motherfucker. But yeah, But hey, with that, Mike, let's wrap this one up. We're at 2 hours on the nose. I'll message you. We'll set a date up for the third
Okay.
episode. And everybody listening, go check him out. I'll put the links to the books in the description. Go follow his Twitter. They're great books. Again, as my own boss, I have on guests that I want to have on. Nobody's saying there's no warlock behind me saying have on Mike. I
Well,
don't
there
give a
might
shit.
be. There might
Maybe
be.
there is, and if there is, I don't even know he's there, which means I guess he's a really good warlock. But I am my own warlock. I am the dictator of this podcast, and so if I have you on, it's because I like talking to you. And for the people listening, if I repeatedly have someone on, especially for books, it's because I genuinely like the book. So I don't push bullshit on this podcast. I don't shill anything for anyone that I don't genuinely enjoy. So if you're interested in the stuff, go grab it, or go grab it, leave them a 1-star review, and tell me it sucks. I don't care. Do whatever, but go check it out, Mike.
Come on, man.
I'm telling people to fucking do it. You don't want me to. You want me to nerf this shit? You want me to sugarcoat it?
1-star.
Do you want me to cover? Do you want me to protect you from criticism? No. If you like it, go leave a good review. If it sucks, tell them it sucks. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that really is.
Go be fucking real. Go be hardcore. I don't know. Maybe maybe throw them for a loop. Throw them a 3-star review, and then just copy and paste a recipe for cherry pie. I don't know. Get in his head. Psyops. But thanks so much for coming on, man.
All right.
And like you said, we will come back. There are good people, but only if we enact to change ourselves.
You're damn right.
God bless everybody. Stay safe.